good evening, everybody, and welcome to the urinary system. This is week 10 for Bio 1022. My name is Ian Coates, and I'll be your facilitator for this week. As I say every week there, I'm just going to go straight through, so please make sure to pause the video whenever you can. Go back, watch all the videos there that are embedded in here, any links. Please don't forget about the textbook as well. All right, to no further ado, this is a good one. We'll see you on the other side. Urinary system. This is where the kidneys, that's what we're talking about here. They're the real brains of the operation, not the heart. And wait until you see what the kidneys pull off here. They're quite amazing little organs. The kidneys are the major excretory organs, okay? They're involved in the solution chemistry. Anything there that's dissolved in the blood, that's what these guys here are after, all right? Any type of nutrients, nitrogenous waste, these kinds of things. The urinary bladder is the temporary storage reservoir for urine. Okay, there's your bladder. Okay, there are the kidneys there. They're the ureters. Okay, they transport the urine from the kidneys down to the bladder. You'll see that there's two of them, one on either side. There's your bladder itself, composed of transitional epithelium. These are stretchy cells there that are able to take a stretch as the urine fills up within the bladder. And then at the end there, the urethra. This one transports the urine from the inside to the outside of the body. They're on the kidneys, but these are the adrenal glands here. More hormonal, more endocrine. We'll get into those there next week. Okay. This is the urinary tract in a nutshell. Again, just side view there. There's the kidneys, the ureter down to the bladder, and then there's the urethra. On the female there, kidney, ureter, okay, bladder is here, and then you'll notice the urethra there. And you'll see that females are actually more prone to UTIs, urinary tract infections, due to the short length of the urethra. Okay, more prone to infections. All right. Functions of the kidney: filtration of metabolic waste from the blood, collecting and excreting the waste to the outside of the body, regulation of RBC production. Absolutely. You're going to see there that the kidneys are the only place in the body where an artery meets a capillary. So they control the blood pressure, they control the amount of blood that's in the and it's quite amazing what these guys do. So they regulate the amount of RBCs that are in the blood. They control the blood pressure, not the heart. They tell the heart what to do. Calcium ion absorption, you know how important that element is, okay? And the volume, composition, and pH of the blood. So these guys here, they are wonder organs. They really are, okay? Gluconeogenesis, there's a little movie there for you guys to watch during prolonged fasting. Endocrine function, okay? The kidneys there, they produce renin, which we'll get to there at the end. Regulation of blood pressure and kidney function. Erythropoietin, you have seen that word before. Regulation of RBC production, tells the bones what to do. So you see that? The kidneys tell the heart what to do, and they also tell the bones what to do. The kidneys are a pretty big deal, as well as vitamin D as well. Shape, size, and location: roughly oval with a medial indentation. That's called a hilum. That little indentation that makes them look like a kidney bean. Roughly about 11 centimeters by 7 by 3. Lie on either side of the vertebral column, okay, between T1 and L3. You'll see there that the left kidney is higher up, and the key word is retroperitoneal. That's where they sit. Retroperitoneal, okay, at the back of the back there, okay. Renal fascia anchor the kidneys there to the surrounding structure. Perineal fat capsule, also called renal fat pad, heavy cushion of fat that surrounds each kidney, okay. Position: retroperitoneal, okay, in the superior lumbar region, posterior wall of the abdominal cavity, Right kidney is lower than the left. Convex lateral surface, concave medial surface, okay? The renal hilum leads to the renal sinus, and you'll see there, we'll get another shot here, and you'll see that hilum, that indentation. Ureter, renal blood vessels, lymphatics, and nerve enter and exit at the hilum. So everything comes in at the hilum. There's this inside dentation, this indentation here. You'll see the artery comes out, the vein comes out, the artery comes in, the vein comes in, the ureter comes out of here. Yeah, lots going on. And just looking at a little bit of the internal structure here, you've got the renal cortex and the renal medulla. And this is the actual cadaver kidney here, but we'll have a look at the cartoon. You'll see that this area in and around here, this is called your cortex. Okay? And then you'll see these triangles here all around. This whole area here is called the medulla. Okay? These are called renal pyramids. Okay? And then these are the columns in between the pyramids there. These are those renal columns. You'll see that we're going to get into something there. These areas in here. Now what happens? The blood comes in, and you see that this is not a small capillary. This is a big artery, and it comes right in, wham, right into the kidney and goes all the way up. The blood comes in and goes up to the top. And this microscopically there, this is where the urine is created. And the urine comes down. We'll get into a lot more detail there sooner. But the urine is formed here at the base there of these pyramids. And it comes out of these little dots called renal papillae, which I'll show you there later. And then the urine comes down here into what we call a minor calyx, which then leads to a major calyx, which then leads to the pelvis region, and where the urine comes out and goes down the ureter down to the bladder. So we've got the calyx here, cup-like structure at each renal papillae that collects the urine. So minor calyx leads to a major calyx. Renal pelvis narrows at its exit there, the kidney, to become the ureter, acts as a collection basin there for all of the urine. We'll get into some more detail here, but just to show you, this is what's going on in a nutshell. What happened here? Yeah, I guess I missed one. Very good. But have a look here. This is for macro anatomy there of the kidney. Watch from 0 to minute 4:38, and then the micro comes after, and I'll show you the same slide but with different different times on it. Okay, so just showing you guys here the renal fascia, the anchoring outer layer of the dense fibrous tissue. You'll see that how the kidney is just embedded and held in place there by this perennial fat capsule and fibrous capsule there. Okay, so that's where we're going on. And blood vessels of the kidney. So there's your abdominal aorta, there's your inferior vena cava, biggest and biggest of the body, right? The renal artery, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. There's your renal artery right in here. See how big that thing is coming off? And it has no place to go. Now you remember there that the arteries, there's no any type of exchange going on because it's just too big a pressure, right? The only place that you can exchange things is at the capillary level. So you have the renal artery, large branch of the abdominal aorta, brings blood into the kidney, and it comes right in and wham! The interlobar artery, this is between the pyramids of the medulla and the renal artery. They bring, and I'll show you there step by step all the different arteries that are involved. You remember afferent and efferent. Okay, afferent means at home, it's coming towards. Efferent means it's leaving. Afferent arterioles extend to the nephron. This is the microscopic functional unit of the kidney. We'll get there. Okay, so just wanted to show you there that the kidneys demand BP, blood pressure, and they'll get it. And if they don't, they'll make a phone call upstairs. The renal artery delivers there about 1,200 milliliters of cardiac output to the kidney per minute. Okay, so about every 4 to 5 minutes, the kidneys have filtered the entire blood. Okay, arterial flow into the and venous flow out of the kidney follow the similar path. So arterial flow and the venous flow, it's all in and around the hilum, that little indentation. Nerve supply is via the sympathetic fibers from the renal plexus. Okay, sympathetic for sure. Blood flow, here we're talking the arteries. So what we've got here now is we have the renal artery. Look at the size of that one, massive pressure. So there's no exchange of anything going on here, but we still need to maintain that pressure. Okay, so there's your renal artery, and you can follow it along here. I'm going to kind of take it along this stretch over here, but there's your renal artery, which then segments there into your segmental artery right here. Okay, and then your segmental artery goes into and changes there into your interlobar artery. Okay, that's your interlobar, which you'll see it over here as well. Interlobar artery, which then goes into your arcuate artery. You'll see it all along here. Okay, it's called your arcuate artery, which then the end of the line there is your cortical radiate artery. That's up in here, and you'll see it right in here. Okay, so this is the blood flow, and it comes in and then goes all the way up here to the cortex. That's where all the blood goes to. Okay, coming out of the kidney. And coming out of the kidney here, it's kind of the same, but we're in reverse. Now we're going to start up in the cortex. Okay, and then you have your cortical radiate vein. Okay, which then leads to your arcuate vein, which then leads to your interlobar. Okay, interlobar vein here. These are in the middle there between the pyramids. Okay, which then leads to your renal vein out and away you go. Okay, so good. So now we've seen the in and out, the arteries and the veins. Here's just another shot here of what's going on. Aorta, renal artery, segmental, interlobar, arcuate. Okay, cortical radiate. And then we get into the nephron, which we'll get into. And once the blood has been filtered, okay, then it goes backwards. There's your cortical radiate vein, arcuate vein, interlobar, renal vein, and then out to the vena cava. Okay, nice little pathway of what's going on. Urine composition. Now we're going to get into how urine is made and the nephron. Okay, we're going to get into the microscopic. It's about 95% water, usually contains urea, uric acid, creatinine, may contain trace amounts of amino acids and varying amount of electrolytes. Volume varies with fluid intake and environmental factors. You can get different colors of urine. You know, if it's more watery, if you're a little overhydrated, it'll be clear. If you're dehydrated, it'll be kind of an orangey color. You know, if you eat too many beets, then it'll be a red color. If you take a vitamin B12 pill, it'll almost be a neon green. So you can change the color. It doesn't mean you're sick. The one thing, there's a couple of things there that you'll never find in the urine, and if you do, you better run to the hospital. One of them there is sugar. Okay, and we'll get into this slide. We'll take it a little further there later on. But yeah, no sugar. If you find sugar in your urine, get to the hospital. Difference between urea and uric acid excretion. Urea is a byproduct of amino acid catabolism. Plasma concentration reflects the amount of protein in diet. Enters the renal tubules through the glomerular filtration. Okay, and contributes there to the reabsorption of water from the collecting ducts. We'll get into these right here. Uric acid is a product of nucleic acid metabolism. Enters the renal tubules through the glomerular filtration. Most reabsorption occurs by active transport, and 10% secreted and excreted. So we'll show you these there. This will make a little bit more sense because what we've talked about here is pathway of the elimination of urine. Okay, we're going to come back to the nephron there in a little bit. We're going to follow through the ureter and moving outside. So here's a shot of the ureter. Tends to be about 25 centimeters long. You remember there that this connects there at the renal hilum and connects down to the bladder. Extends downward posterior to the parietal peritoneum, parallel to the vertebral column. In the pelvic cavity joins the urinary bladder. The wall of the ureter, we've got a mucus layer, muscular layer, and a fibrous coat. And you'll see there's really not much to it. Okay, there's the lumen, not much going on. Note that the many folds of the mucus lining that unfold to permit stretching as the urine passes through the tube. The nature of the transitional epithelium, that's the stretchy cells also found in the bladder, allows further stretch without damage to the mucosa. A thick muscular layer of smooth muscle helps pump urine towards the bladder. On its outside surface, the ureter is covered by a tough, fibrous connective tissue coat. Okay. Here's just a nice shot there of the ureter, and you'll see here the when we're talking there, the wall of the bladder. Okay, the ureter. And you'll see how it comes out. It's not, the ureter is not down, it's actually pointing up. So the urine has to flow up and then down. The oblique path of the ureter through the wall of the bladder is seen here in the coronal frontal section, permits the junction to act as a valve, reducing flow in the bladder as it becomes full. Okay, and just interesting, and it's quite ingenious how this works, because if this was just down at the bottom, you'd have leakage all the time, but in this way here, you have some control. The bladder itself, hollow, distensible muscular organ located in the pelvic cavity, posterior to the symphysis pubis and inferior to the parietal peritoneum. Transitional epithelium, you'll see that there in the final on the exam for sure. Transitional epithelium. The internal floor of the bladder includes a triangle area called the trigone, which has an opening at each of the 3 angles. Okay. The urethra, okay, small tube lined with the mucous membrane, okay, that extends from the trigone down to the exterior of the body. Here we're talking here's the bladder, here's your trigone, there's your urethra right there. In females, lies posterior to the pubic symphysis and anterior to the vagina, approximately about 3 centimeters long, very prone to UTIs, urinary tract infections. In males, after leaving the bladder, it passes through the prostate gland, where it's joined by the 2 ejaculatory ducts. From the prostate, it extends to the base of the penis, through the center of the penis, and extends along the urinary medius, about 20 centimeters long. Okay. Micturition process, that's just the medical term for going pee. As the bladder volume increases, micturition concentration of the detrusor muscles increases and the internal urethra sphincter relaxes. The external urethral sphincter muscle contracts at first, then at the appropriate time it relaxes to release the urine. Okay. The micturition reflex, okay, have a look at this graph here. We've got bladder pressure as opposed to urine volume. And you'll see there that the pressure in the bladder increases as the amount of urine increases as well. Okay, and you'll see here that we actually get these micturition contractions. Okay, that happen as the more urine fills the bladder, the contractions get stronger until you are forced to go and find a bathroom. Just the steps there involved with micturition. Y'all can have a read of these there. It's always good to know. Very good. Moving on into the nephron. Okay. There's roughly about 1 million of these microscopic cells per kidney. Okay. And each nephron, and you'll see it's kind of a strange looking contraption here. All right. And we'll get more into this in some pretty good detail, but The whole idea, you remember that blood that came in through the renal artery and then went up through the interlobar artery and all the way up there, and that's where this blood is going. This is an artery, okay, and it's coming in. There is pressure coming in here, and wham, it hits this glomerulus, which is encased inside the Bowman's capsule. Okay, these are capillaries in here. So this artery comes in and wham, the blood gets whacked. And so much in fact that the stuff in the blood gets filtered and pushed out into here. So then it comes along here and goes down here and around, and eventually this is the finished urine right in here. It collects in this collecting duct, and then it goes to the calyx. Remember, there, to the calyx, to the pelvis, and down the ureter and out. So what is going on in these areas right here? Well, this is called your proximal, closest, convoluted tubule, because it's closest to this Bowman's capsule, the glomerulus. And then the area, it dips down. And you'll see why it dips down, because it dips down into a different area of the kidney. All right. Remember, the cortex was on the outside and then your medulla was on the inside. Well, this will generally be in the cortex area, and it dips down into the medulla where those pyramids are. That's where this is right here. And then it comes back up again to the distal, farther convoluted tubule, proximal, distal, separated there by this loop of Henle. Descending loop and an ascending loop, distal convoluted tubule, and then goes to the collecting duct. Okay, so each nephron is made up of two regions, the renal corpuscle and the renal tubule. Corpuscle, Bowman's capsule, and glomerulus, and then you have the renal tubules here, and connects to a shared collecting duct. You'll see that there was another one over here, another nephron over here. This is a common collecting duct. Renal corpuscle, okay, the Bowman's capsule here, made up of the glomerulus tucked inside the Bowman's capsule. The Bowman's capsule, formed by the parietal and visceral walls with a space between them, okay, pedicel there and the visceral there are packed closely together to form this filtration slit. So as I said, this is an artery carrying the blood, hits a capillary, wham! These things get filtered out. And you'll see here that this is the shot of the kidney, and you'll see that this is your cortex. This is the outside. You remember that? If you need to go back, pause the video and go back and have a look. This is the cortex area, and this is one of those pyramids, right? This is that area underneath called the medulla. And you'll have a look here that these are these nephrons, right? And I'll just zoom in, and you'll see that just to keep it kind of the same here as what we were looking at, there is your Bowman's capsule. There's those capillaries in there. There's the artery coming in, right? And pressure, the blood gets filtered, okay? And the blood doesn't go into here. It's all the filtrate, the things that were filtered off. The blood comes in, wham, gets hit. These things get filtered off, and they travel through here. The blood doesn't get filtered in here. It's too big. Can't get filtered off, and it just continues on. Okay? And you'll see what happens here. These blood vessels continue and wrap all around in here. So you remember, this stuff that was filtered, it's traveling all through here. But all of this area is circumvented by capillaries. There's a reason why. Okay, we'll get into that there. But as these things get filtered, there's your proximal convoluted tubule, and then we get into the loop of Henle right in here. And you'll see how that dips down into the medulla, because this area here is saltier than the cortex. And it has to be, because there's things there, there's still things to happen. Just because the blood was filtered here doesn't mean that this is the end of the line. This is only the start. Now, all of that filtrate goes through here, and would you believe that most of it gets reabsorbed back into the blood? That's why there are capillaries all circumventing here. And there's your loop of Henry dipping down into the medulla, and then we're back into the collecting duct, which then comes down. Okay, and then we have the renal papillae down here, and this is where the urine is formed, or it's created and comes down here and eventually goes out. So there's two kinds of nephrons here that I want you to know. Here's these guys here are called cortical nephrons. They reside mostly in the cortex. 80% of all nephrons are cortical, located close to the surface of the kidney, sits higher in the cortex. And then here we have juxtamedullary, okay, nephrons. These ones here, they sit lower, okay. The loop of Henle dips deeper into the medulla, regulates water balance, okay. Larger glomeruli, and they have a higher GFR, glomerular filtration rate. Yes, that's actually a thing. We'll get into all this kind of stuff there. Now, as we said there, the blood gets filtered, but the majority of whatever's filtered gets put back into the blood. I'll show you a slide there later that even though we only have 5 liters of blood, would you believe me there that the kidneys filter 180 liters of filtrate a day? So how many times is the blood getting filtered by the kidneys if it's producing 180 liters of filtrate that travels through here? 180 liters is produced every day, but we don't go to the bathroom 180 liters. We only go to the bathroom maybe about 1 or 2 liters a day. So basically 178 liters of this filtrate is reabsorbed back into the blood. And how is it done that? It's called the vasa recta. Okay? These are long vessels parallel to the long loop of Henle. See all these blood vessels in here? Okay? Arise from the efferent arteriole, the juxtamedullary nephron, concentrates urine through reabsorption. So the majority of whatever's been filtered off gets reabsorbed here by these guys here. And these are the blood vessels, the capillaries there that circumvent, okay, the nephron. Okay, it's called the vasa recta. And they hang out in and around there, the loop of Henle down and low. The peritubular capillaries, they surround the renal tubule. Low-pressure porous capillaries adapted there for absorption arise from the efferent arteriole, cling to the adjacent renal tubules in the cortex, and empty into the venules there. It's all about reabsorbing what's been filtered off. Okay. Functions of the nephron. The glomerular capillaries are specialized for filtration and removal of waste from the blood and regulates water and electrolyte concentration. These are the only capillaries in the body that are fed and drained by an arteriole. Okay? It's pressure meets no pressure. Okay? That's what's going on here. You've got to have this arteriole meeting that capillary in order to get pressure. This allows the blood pressure in the capillary bed to be very high, and it forces fluid and solutes out of the blood into the Bowman's capsule that surrounds that capillary bed. Okay, there's your Bowman's capsule, and this is where the filtrate goes in and through. Okay, most of the filtrate is reabsorbed into the renal tubule cells and returns to the blood through the peritubular capillaries. Okay, so everything will 180 liters a day will get filtered. Most of it will get reabsorbed. The glomerular capillary receives blood from the afferent arteriole and it passes through to the efferent arteriole. The efferent arteriole gives rise to the peritubular systems, which surrounds the tubule capillary loops called vasa recta dip down into the medulla. So there's your vasa recta, okay, and you'll see your afferent arteriole is bringing blood to the Bowman's capsule. The efferent exiting is leaving. Okay, this is kind of a better shot here of what's going on here. So there is your afferent arteriole, right? Artery, okay, and you'll notice where we are. We're in the cortex. There is the medulla down here. There's your loop of Henle dipping down. So The arteriole is bringing the blood into the Bowman's capsule, the glomerulus, where it meets the capillary bed. And wham! The blood gets filtered. The blood leaves. Okay? The blood is not part of the filtrate. These are the things there that are within the blood that gets filtered. So, wham, the blood gets filtered. All the filtrate travels through. The blood carries through. Its job is not done. The blood then circumvents the entire nephron because this filtrate is coming off. And as we said, the majority of it will get secreted back, reabsorbed back into the blood. So the filtrate, the majority of it will go back into the blood. That's why these capillaries are here, for reabsorption. And depending upon where it is, this is the proximal convoluted tubule here, which then moves down into the loop of Henle. There's your descending loop, and then there's your ascending part of the loop of Henle, and then we move into the distal convoluted tubule right here, and other things are happening different from here. So there's one segment, the proximal convoluted tubule, where something is happening. Then you have the loop of Henle, which is broken up into two sections, the descending and ascending loop. Two different things are happening there. Then we have the distal convoluted tubule, where different things are happening there. And by this point in time, it's officially urine. Okay, so hopefully that's a little bit of a better diagram there. There's your vasa recta down in here. These blood vessels are here for the whole point of reabsorption. Okay, and once the blood has been cleaned and everything has been reabsorbed, you'll see there that it goes on its way back out the vein to the vena cava and back up to the heart. Okay. Great movie here for you guys to watch. Okay. This is that second half of the movie there from before. Okay. The previous part was on the macro. This is on the micro view, and just kind of the same thing here. All right. So there's your arteriole comes in, the blood gets whacked. Okay. And the filtrate comes off. This blood here comes out again and then circumvents this whole nephron for the point of reabsorption, because the filtrate, here's your proximal convoluted tubule, down into the loop of Henle, down into the medulla area, back up to the cortex. This is the distal convoluted tubule, and then to your collecting duct there, which then goes to your minor calyx, to a major calyx, to the renal pelvis, and then out the ureter, down to the bladder, and out the urethra. Okay. The glomerulus, also called the renal corpuscle, is composed of the glomerulus and the glomerular capsule, the Bowman's capsule around. It has fenestrated glomerular endothelium, which allows filtrate to pass from the plasma into the glomerular capsule. And nice shot coming up there. The whole idea of the glomerulus right here, again, there's your afferent arteriole to the glomerulus, and then to your efferent arteriole, okay? And this is specialized for filtration. The blood pressure is high because the afferent arterioles are smaller in diameter than the efferent arterioles, which have a high resistance, okay? And good stuff. Just that whole idea of fenestration, these pores in the capillary walls that permit filtration. This is what's going on in the glomerulus. This is how the blood is able to be filtered. The glomerular capsule membrane there, formed by the glomerular endothelium, basement membrane, and visceral layers of the Bowman's capsule. Mesangial cells there. These are cells located between the glomerular capillaries. They perform various structural and support functions as well. More shots of these right here of the glomerular capillaries. View of the surface of the glomerular capillaries from the vantage point of the capsule glomerular space. Okay. This one here, you'll see the pores there. Okay. Note the multiple fenestrations that perforate the endothelial cells there. Okay. Glomerular capsule membrane. You just see here there that what we've got going on here, this is the whole idea of fenestration. You see the RBCs, they can't get through, they're too big, okay? And you see these filtration slits right in here, okay? And in here there, and these podocyte cells there, the process, okay? So what we've got here, like if you take a look at the picture here showing the filtration membrane formed there when these foot-like extensions, these pedicels of cells form the visceral wall of the glomerular capsule, share this basement membrane with the fenestrated endothelial cells there that form the glomerular capsule. So the glomerulus right here, this is where the blood will be, and you see this fenestration allows things, and then we're into the Bowman's capsule, which eventually there will lead to the proximal convoluted tubule there. Okay. More on the glomerular capsule there. You have the parietal layer as opposed to the visceral layer. The parietal layer is simple squamous epithelium. The visceral layer there, branching epithelial podocytes. Extensions terminate in the foot processes there that cling to that basement membrane. Filtration slits allow the filtrate to pass into the capsular space. Okay, that's what we're talking about there. Okay. And that was for your glomerular capsule, simple squamous epithelium. Here we have the proximal convoluted tubule. Now we're into this area here. These are cuboidal cells with dense microvilli for absorption, and large mitochondria, functions in reabsorption and secretion confined to the cortex. Okay. The proximal convoluted tubule there. The loop of Henle. Now we're dipping down. Okay, it has the descending and the ascending loop. Thin segment usually in the descending loop. Simple squamous epithelium, freely permeable to water. Thick segment of the ascending limb, cuboidal to the columnar cells. Okay. Moving on there, the distal convoluted tubule here. These are cuboidal cells with very few microvilli. So there's really not a lot of reabsorption going on here. Okay? This is more for secretion and functions more in secretion than reabsorption and confined to the cortex. Okay? The collecting ducts, this is basically the final product here. The urine is made and is traveling down. Receives filtrate from many nephrons fused together to deliver urine through the renal papillae, okay, at the bottom of the pyramids. Cell types, intercalated cells, cuboidal cells with some microvilli, functions to maintain the acid-base balance of the body there. Okay. Renal papillae, this is down, you'll see here. There's your renal pyramid there, and at the bottom you'll see these little holes, and if you refer to the video there with the times on it, okay, there's good shots there of the renal papillae, and that's these here, and you'll see these openings there, and the urine comes out here. Okay. These are the renal papillae, collecting ducts, CD, okay, can be seen overviewing into the calyx C, okay, at the papillae tip. The interstitial tissue includes some Henle loop and vasorecta tissue as well. So, in a nutshell, here we go. There's your afferent arteriole, comes in, wham! Okay, the blood gets filtered, and it goes along here. The blood then leaves through the efferent arteriole and then loops around. And you see that once the blood has been filtered, you'll see here at the proximal convoluted tubule right here, the majority of the sodium and water is removed. Glucose can be removed as well. I have more details of this there later on, but basically by the time this filtrate gets down to here, the majority of the water has been removed. It's very, very concentrated, okay? And the water may be put back in here a little bit, but you'll see there at the distal convoluted tubule, this is more about secretion. Okay, we're not really absorbing anymore. There could be some absorption there, ammonia, this and that, but the majority here we're secreting. We're getting rid of possibly some drugs, anything there, some finishing touches. Okay. and then we're on to the collecting duct right here, the finished product, urine. Now we're just going to break this urine formation up into 3 parts here. First one there, we're going to look at glomerular filtration, number 1. Okay, this is in the glomerular Bowman's capsule. Substances move from the blood to the glomerular capsule. And anything there with the 1, we're talking about this. Then we move on into number 2, tubular reabsorption. Okay, that's where we're into this section right in here. Okay, and substances move from the renal tubules into the blood, okay, of the paratubular capillaries. Glucose, water, urea, protein, creatinine, amino acids, lactic, citric, uric acids, phosphate, sulfate, calcium, potassium, sodium ions. These are pretty important stuff, and they get reabsorbed back into the blood. They were initially filtered off, but the majority of it is going back in the blood. Okay, there's your reabsorption. And then tubular secretion. This will go on there at the distal convoluted tubule. Substances move from the blood of the paratubular capillaries into the renal tubules. Drugs and ions generally. Okay, any finishing touches there, we get them out of the blood and into the urine and get it out of here. Okay, let's go into some detail, shall we? Glomerular filtration, water and dissolved solutes filter across the glomeruli into the Bowman's capsule. This is this whole idea here. Okay, there's your afferent, arterial, and your efferent pressure, and the blood gets filtered, and anything gets filtered goes into the Bowman's capsule, which then goes on to the proximal convoluted tubule. Okay, see that fenestration there? Allows things to pass through. Okay, what substances are filtered? Well, it's basically all small things. RBCs, these kind of proteins generally don't get filtered. They're too big, right? But water, sodium, potassium, chloride, glucose, uric acid pass easily through. Large blood cells and proteins don't. Okay, and that's what's going on there. Passive mechanical process driven by hydrostatic pressure. The glomerulus is very efficient filter because its filtration membrane is very permeable and has a large surface area. Glomerular blood pressure is higher, 55 millimeters of mercury, than other capillaries. It can handle the hit. Molecules that are less than 5 nanometers are not filtered, plasma proteins, RBCs, this kind of thing. What are the kidneys filtering anyway? I like this slide. Typical urine content. There's your sodium, potassium, small amount of calcium. That's a pretty important ion. We tend not to throw that one out. Magnesium, chloride can go, bicarbonates, sulfates, phosphates. Have a look here. Glucose, 0. Okay, if glucose is making its way into the urine, you want to look at type 2 diabetes. Okay, that's a sign. All right, so there's 0 glucose in the urine. Okay. Moving on into what we call net filtration pressure. I'm not going to go too crazy into this, but I just wanted to show you guys there about what is actually going on. When we're talking the NFP pressure here, basically it's just relying on 10 millimeters of mercury. As stated earlier there, the pressure there in the capillaries there is about 55 millimeters of mercury. Okay, glomerular hydrostatic pressure. That's the pressure coming in. Okay, blue arrow or purple arrow. But then you have 2 opposing pressures there, what we call the blood colloid osmotic pressure. Okay, this one here can be about 30 millimeters of mercury, green arrow, pushing back. And as well, you have what's called the capillary hydrostatic pressure. It's also pushing back as well. And generally speaking, those will be about 45 millimeters of mercury. So this is 55. So therefore, we have a net force coming through here. So we're able to filter, okay, with 10 millimeters of mercury. And that's the force there that we can clean the blood with. Okay, thought that was interesting. Kidney physiology, mechanisms of urine formation. The kidneys filter the body's entire plasma volume 60 times each day. Filtrate the blood plasma minus the proteins. That's what the filtrate is. Blood plasma minus proteins. And the urine, the amount of urine is less than about 1%. As I said there earlier the kidneys filter, they create about 180 liters of filtrate each day, but we sure as heck don't pee 180 liters a day. We only pee anywhere between 1 and 2 liters, and so therefore the majority of the filtrate, the stuff there that's filtered off, gets reabsorbed by those blood vessels there that circumvent the nephron. Okay, so basically about 178 liters is reabsorbed daily. Moving on into number 2, urine formation, tubular reabsorption. Returns the filtrate from the tubules back into the blood via the peritubular capillaries that circumvent. Okay, most reabsorption takes place in the proximal convoluted tubule. Okay, the kidneys choose the type and quantity of substances it reabsorbs. Active sodium pumped from the tubule into the peritubular capillaries. Passive reabsorption, water and chloride ions passively follow sodium into the peritubular capillaries. One of the general rules in biology, wherever sodium is absorbed, water will soon follow. So that's why on most of the if the kidneys need to reabsorb water, what they'll do is they'll retain the sodium, because wherever the sodium goes, the water will follow. Okay. As we just said, sodium and water reabsorption. Osmosis reabsorbs water in response to active transport, reabsorbing sodium and other solutes in the proximal portion of the renal tubule. So you'll see what's going on here. Sodium ions are reabsorbed. Negatively charged ions are attracted to the positive sodium. Okay, as concentration of ions increases in the plasma, osmotic pressure will increase and the water will follow. Okay, so that's what's going on there in the proximal convoluted tubule. Sodium and water filtration, reabsorption, and excretion. You have a look there. There are some nice numbers for you to fulfill your day. Okay. Urine formation, tubular reabsorption continued. So what again is reabsorbed in the proximal convoluted tubule? We're looking at about 99% of the sodium, 99% of the water, 100% of the glucose, half of the urea, and 0% of the creatinine. Okay. Just some more shots there. Numbers might be kind of different, but generally speaking, glucose and amino acids 100%. Okay. Down into the loop of Henle. What's going on in here? If there is, if all the water basically hasn't been reabsorbed, the majority of it is here. Okay, this is permeable to water, so water can be removed as needed. You remember there, you were down into the medulla area. This is saltier, so you're able to remove the excess water from here, so that by the time the urine, the pre-urine, okay, the filtrate, it gets down here, it's pretty concentrated. Okay, so there's no water, no more water removed from here, but what can go on here? Sodium, potassium, and chloride, okay, can get removed here. Two countercurrent mechanisms there. There's the countercurrent multiplier there in the Henle loop, concentrations of sodium and chloride in the interstitial fluid of the renal medulla. As I said, it was saltier there, okay. Countercurrent exchange in the vasa recta maintains a high solute concentration. Okay, water is reabsorbed from the tubule fluid, and urea is picked up there from the interstitial fluid in the descending limb. Okay, and you know this whole idea of what we call countercurrent flow. This is what's going on there in the loop of Henle, right? And it's pretty important, and this shows the concept of this countercurrent flow. Simply refers to a flow in opposite directions, as the inset shows. Tubule filtrate in the nephron loop flows in a countercurrent manner, as does blood flowing through the vasa recta. Remember all those capillaries, okay, hanging down underneath? It's exactly the same thing, okay? And the countercurrent exchange there in the vasa recta, because a vasa recta forms a countercurrent loop, blood leaving the capillary bed has only a slightly higher solute content than when it entered. Thus, the high osmolarity of the medullary tissue fluid is maintained. If the peritubular blood instead travels straight through the tissue, all excess solute in the medulla would be removed, and the osmolarity of the medullary interstitial fluid would be equivalent to that of the cortex. You wouldn't have that differential. Numbers in the diagram are expressed in millimoles. Okay, so there's your cortex, there's your medulla in here, and that's why it happens there, this whole idea of countercurrent. Okay. Reabsorption capabilities. Now we're into the distal convoluted tubule and then moving into the collecting ducts here. Reabsorption is hormonally regulated, okay? And but generally we're into secretion at this point in time, okay? Calcium there, parathyroid hormone, water, antidiuretic hormone, sodium there, aldosterone there. We'll move into these there. Aldosterone reabsorption capabilities of the renal tubules and the collecting ducts. Mechanism there of aldosterone, which there's a great video there that I'll show you. Actually, I think it's pretty soon than later. Targets the collecting ducts, principal cells, and the distal convoluted tubule. Promotes synthesis of sodium and potassium channels. Promotes synthesis there of these basolateral sodium potassium ATPases. The tubular secretion. There's a good movie there for you to watch. This one here is awesome. Please have a look at this. It details with some good graphics. In the distal convoluted tubules there, potassium, hydrogen, ammonium, creatinine, organic acids may be passively secreted, okay, to the convoluted tubules in response to an active reabsorption of sodium ions, okay. Eliminates undesirable substances that have been passively reabsorbed, rids the body of excess potassium if needed, controls blood pH, these kinds of things here. Okay. A nice little review of what's going on. There's your renal corpuscle, renal tubules, descending loop, ascending loop, and distal convoluted. This one here is a great slide. Keep this one close at hand. Regulating blood pressure, okay, JC and macula densa cells. In the now, just going to break through this here. There is your afferent arterial. It's bringing in the blood into your Bowman's capsule. Here are your capillaries, your glomerulus, where the blood gets whacked. The filtrate goes off into your proximal convoluted tubule, and then the blood comes back out to the efferent and then wraps around to form your vasa recta and all that, right, for reabsorption. Well, have a look at what else we've got going on here. We've got these juxtaglomerular cells, and these are in and around here the afferent arterial. And then we've got these macula densa cells that are right in by the Bowman's capsule. So these two cells here are doing something very interesting here. So in the arterial wall, you have these juxtaglomerular cells. They're smooth muscle cells that control the hormone renin. Renin will, if you're not getting the blood pressure that you need, because you need to have pressure, because whack. And if you're not getting the pressure in here, then you can't do your job. So then these guys here, they make a phone call upstairs. Okay? These JG cells there, juxtaglomerular cells, are mechanoreceptors that sense blood pressure. Okay? So these guys here are sensing the blood pressure. The macula densa cells, these ones right in here, located adjacent to the JC cells, these guys here are chemoreceptors that respond to changes in the salt content of the filtrate and signal arterial smooth muscles. Okay? Very good. The extrinsic control, glomerular filtration rate, this is called the renin-angiotensin system here. And this is how the whole idea, if these cells aren't, if you're not getting the blood pressure there that you require, well, this is the phone call upstairs there that these guys make. And triggered there when the granular cells of the juxtaglomerular cells release renin. So there's your renin right there. And who is releasing renin? It's these guys right in here. These guys will secrete renin. And renin there when it's involved there with, so we have the renin there with the angiotensinogen there produced by the liver. These guys will make angiotensin 1. Then with angiotensin 1, with the ACE converting enzyme there from the lungs, this forms angiotensin 2. And now we're well on our way there to vasoconstriction. That increases BP. Increased aldosterone secretion. That will affect the antidiuretic hormone secretion, and what will happen is the kidneys will start retaining sodium. And remember, wherever you keep sodium, water will follow. So if we're keeping water in from the urinary system, but we're keeping water in from that end, what also happens is it makes you thirsty, so you start drinking water on the other end. So you're decreasing the size of the blood vessels and increasing the volume of the blood within those blood vessels. So you're going to increase the blood pressure for sure. And that's what the kidneys want. Watch that movie there. It's a good one. Okay. And lots of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Go back and have a look at this. Go back and watch all the movies. Have a read of the book. And we'll see you there for next week. Thank you so much. Have a great day.